Abby, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm really happy you made it, and thanks for waiting a few minutes. Um, okay, there's so much to talk about, and I know that we have a lot of interesting common ground, but I first want to introduce you. So, for everyone who doesn't know, Abby Levine Brody is a veteran educator, successful serial ed tech founder, digital parenting influencer, precision medicine advocate, and author. Graduate from Duke University. I just checked out your Instagram. It looks like you do so much cool stuff. And as someone who grew up with ADHD, I have so many questions. So
Yeah.
I guess I'll jump right into it. First of all, what's your backstory in terms of what brought you to this career path, to this unique career path, looking back?
So I'm an education disruption. I believe the future is looking very different than yesterday or even today. And our education systems are not even close to prepared for getting our children where they need to be. But how I got to this place was actually, so I was going to Duke University, straight A student. I checked every box. I rocked at school. School is like a good place for me. But then I went on this program abroad called Semester at Sea. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not. Oh, well, is it like you're just going to another country for a semester? Right.
You live on a boat and you
Oh,
circumvent the earth and you stop
I've
and
never
you're
heard of that.
living with your professors. That for me was mind boggling. My experience being the great student that I was is that I got to class, I listened to someone talk to me, and I was a really good writer and a very fast typer, which gave me a huge advantage on my notes. I would
Mm,
memorize those notes. I would take said tests. I would get an A, and then knowledge gone, completely meaningless. But I got my gold star. I got the A.
right.
That was what I thought education was. And then I went on semester at sea. And I lived with my professors, and I didn't just talk about the Taj Mahal in my architecture class. I went and saw it. And it blew my mind. It blew my mind. And I
Right.
realized what is meaningful in education, what really matters, how it can be. And I set off my entire career from
Right.
then on.
That's fascinating because I understand like the value of education comes from this discipline, this structure, this hierarchy of teacher, student, and it's almost like it's this bureaucratic system that has chugged along for so long, and it just works for most people, I guess. So we don't seem to question it. But you know,
But it's not true. It's someone who
mm,
it doesn't work for most people, actually.
see, I don't
Maybe
even know what normal is, so I make the assumption it works for most people.
no,
I certainly knew it didn't work for me.
as someone who's run multiple schools and seen the data and sat on those data sets and got to analyze and parse it, I can tell you that you are not alone, sir. Okay. There are
Hmm.
many more like you, especially males. Just this is just statistically speaking, males are really hurting or underperforming compared to the girls for many reasons that we could dive into if you like. But yeah, the system was set for industrial agriculture based society. It was
Hmm.
really important for kids to have, we were getting them into the factory system. They needed to be able to follow instructions, read things, and regurgitate. We're no longer in that society. And we're actually at a place that I think is really exciting in education where we're seeing a real democratization and the use of technology
Right.
uh, can actually help support that.
So let me ask you this, because every time someone says the schooling system is broken, I tend to say, hey, I understand and I agree. But it doesn't hold much weight if you can propose a better solution. And my question to you would be, I agree with you, there are issues. How would you make it better? Like, how would you classify people into groups? Like, what would your solution be?
I'm so excited you asked me that question because I've actually attempted it. I have created the solution. I still believe in it. And by the way, entrepreneurs who are listening to this, I will support you if you go after it. Now my solution can happen. It can happen. Basically, so I believed if we needed to reform all of education and create a school that works for everyone, we need to start at the top. So I created a college, a new rethink of higher education, and it's a hybrid environment. And let me tell you why this is part of the solution. Education is now free. You can go to Harvard too. And if you want to take the number one class at Yale, the chances of you getting into it, if you actually get into Yale, are like 20%, but you could take it online for $20. Okay.
Hmm.
You're not going to get the degree with it, but you're going to get the information. So
Right.
at my school, which was called Mix, Make Your Experience, every student was on an individualized course plan, backwards designed by what their goals were. And sometimes I said something pretty controversial. Those goals don't require a degree. Not everything needs 4 years. 4 years is an arbitrary number made up by a bunch of men in the 1910s. Okay.
It's a
There's
headless
nothing
beast
magical.
taking the last few steps. It's an old archaic system,
Huh?
and we tend to give way more value to it than we should. But to some extent, it does hold some value where it might not tell you everyone who's great, but it can filter out to the opposite end of the spectrum where if someone has a degree, you can, and you're right, like you said, you took a course and, it went in and right out. But here's the thing, it's not the context specifically that you took with you, it's the abstract critical thinking skills that that you've muscled up during the course, and whether you realize it or not, you take it with you. So when someone comes to me with a degree in computer science saying, "Hey, I'm looking for a programming job," here's the thing. I've met people with no degree, no experience who've had a quicker turnaround time, a quicker delta, a quicker ability to
Mhm.
adapt and learn than someone with a 4-year degree in computer science, where it's just rigid. It doesn't move forward. But for the most part, what I usually take for when someone says they have a degree is they go, "Oh, hey, you've got pretty good problem solving skills." That's really as far as it goes
It's
for me.
You're not wrong, Michael. That's the issue we're seeing with hiring managers. They don't feel like they don't have the skill set. They have the inability to do the job because they can't communicate with their peers. They can't problem solve. And that's why when you democratize the content and let that be free, you can focus and double click on humanity. And that's the part of the education system that I'm most excited about. Because how do you learn those skills? How do you
Okay.
learn grit? And that is through personalized experiential learning. So schools can give every student an AI tutor where they can get the best instructor from the professor at
I love it.
Harvard for an hour a day and then spend the next 5 hours building companies, actually maybe creating the food, making their own meals by garden to education can become beautiful and those skills can be taught in a much more efficient way. So I think the solution is leveraging technology to create individualized learning systems that allow teachers to double down on humanity and those experiences.
I 100% agree, especially with like the progression of natural language processors like ChatGPT. Schools are like saying, "Hey, you can't use it." That's not how the world works. It's your job to adapt to the advent of the world. If ChatGPT is a tool at our fingertips, if it's a PhD level virtual assistant, if leveraged correctly, then why are you saying we shouldn't use it? We should use it because that's now a natural part of society. Now you still need to create, competition, education, learning in that context, in that
I couldn't
ecosystem.
agree more. And that's why I created a free AI course, actually. So everything I do is for free. I can tell you why another time, but it is a free AI course and it's for parents. And let me tell you why. The students get it. My kid is 11 and he understands it. The teachers, not so much. And that's another project that I work on. Actually, the thing that's scaring me most are the parents. They have no clue what's going on. How do you prepare your child for a world that you don't even understand? So
Correct.
one of my
And
passions is
by
to
the
help parents get
sorry
on
to
board.
cut you off, Abby, but you
Yeah.
also can't blame them either because mm, parents have good intentions and they're transferring down the values that they know that they've worked for them. So at their time, doing X, Y, and Z was considered the right decision to live, to have the best chance of living your best life. And unfortunately, that context has changed. So parents are just telling you what they think works for them and what they know through their own wisdom and experience. But the times change really fast. And we're leaving a system where you can look at a piece of paper, say, hey, let me see what job is paying the best. I'm going to become an engineer. I'm going to specialize in this, invest 3 years of my time, have a nuanced degree, and get a very specific job at a specific company. I think the technology, the rate of technology is growing exponentially, that we're losing our ability, we're losing our predictive power and say, hey, like, 3 years from now, these jobs will be jobs that'll
Yeah.
pay well. And you need to learn like abstract skills that have wide set of application. You need to not tie yourself to specific locations. You need to do things that you can't touch and all the intangibles. And I completely agree with you that, it's like it's all if you want to obtain knowledge nowadays, it's all at your fingertips. It doesn't come down to whether you're lucky enough, where you're the upper echelons of society and you have access to higher level education. The world is at your fingertips. It really comes down to if you want to learn it or not. It really comes down to what you're willing to give up in your life to obtain that knowledge. So I couldn't agree with what you're doing more. It sounds absolutely fascinating. And I was looking a little bit at your social media, and there's a lot of stuff in the field of precision medicine. And I'm wondering, how does this all tie into what
I
you're doing?
know. So, I've spent my entire life building schools and creating education systems, and then my life took a real left turn where my husband and my then 5-year-old son were both diagnosed with stage 4 rare cancers within 6 months of each other.
Sorry to
I
hear that.
lived in Sloan Memorial Hospital with my 5-year-old for on and off for 2 years. And you learn a lot, especially when living in a pediatric oncology ward as an educator. I saw things and I realized that the stakes of the system where, in education, you're a kindergartner, no matter how old, just because your birth date is there, you are in this cohort and you're supposed to behave like this cohort. And the stakes there, as you know, can be really detrimental to your self-worth, to the kid who doesn't make it, all those things. But the stakes in healthcare, when your kid is in a protocol, right, is now in a cohort that share, and my kids' stance, nothing in common. The kids in my child's um, protocol for his cancer treatment were aged 3 months to 16. They share nothing in common. Their tumors all look different, but yet they're given standard care, all of them. And when my son
Right.
was deemed chemo resistant, but yet had to continue chemo for 7 more rounds, I realized, wow, the the stakes here are even higher. They're life or death. While in education, we can hurt a kid and they can not read and maybe get passed through the system. Here, when we just use a one size fits all blanket, people die. And that I couldn't turn away from. So while my expertise is education, I'm also a fierce advocate of taking precision and individualized care to the healthcare world, and sit on the board of the newest medical school, Board of Precision Medicine.
Yeah, I mean, you're touching an industry that's also plagued with bureaucracy. And there's a huge double-edged sword there. I mean, we can talk about even the FDA as an example of how, in order to get a drug out there that can help save thousands and millions of lives, has to go through this rigorous and lengthy process of FDA approval of clinical trials. And, the benefit to that is that, you get good data points and you find out what works. The downside to that is you're stalling so many great innovative ideas that can get pushed into the consumer ecosystem, and it just gets bogged down by just legalities and technicalities. So,
But on the
you
positive note, I have to say one thing. What excites me today, I was on a call of this today, so it's top of mind, that we're going into a beautiful age when it comes to AI in healthcare.
right.
That is really exciting. And I see some personalized, DNA mapping of the biome of my child before they give them the chemo to make sure the chemo will work. Right. I see a brighter future here. So it's funny. I see healthcare moving faster than education, which I think is a real shame, but
Yeah. I think, just to push this into an unexpected direction, I think the conversation of longevity and, human life expectancy is going to take a wild turn in the future. The conversation of longevity, of human life expectancy, and how long we're going to live. Um, I think that the conversation of us all being trapped by death and seeing death as a good thing, I think that's going to start to change when we look at aging as more a disease
Mhm.
than something that we're all bound towards.
And if we're
And
gonna live forever, what excites me on that topic, because it's gonna happen, I agree with you that we're changing what lifespan longevity looks like. What does education look like? The idea that you go to school for 4 years and you're done and set for
right,
maybe 120 more, I don't think so. So we have to really
yeah,
consider these
it,
systems.
we're in uncharted territory in the sense that none of us know where even the collective role of the human race is heading. Like, AI is going to have its place. There's no question about it, right? And the question is, how far along the spectrum can it get? How quickly? And we tend to underestimate it all the time. So, okay, so there's a unique role for humans. What's that unique role going to be carved out? I mean, we thought like, something like being a doctor or being a lawyer is just a highly specialized discipline that's reserved for intelligent people. AI can take that over. We thought that stuff like music, AI would take the
Right.
would take the longest to find its place. And it's
Well,
doing a beautiful job with art, poetry, music. So, you know, yeah, education is so important, and you're so right about that. And the question, it's even deeper than that. That's like it's like, okay, so but what kind of education are we going to be able to contribute to the world that AI will still struggle with in the next 10, 15, 30 years? It's almost like an investment now. You got to make these projections for way ahead. You got to invest your time early. But we're in this together, so I think it's quite exciting.
you know, these are big questions, and no one, and
Yeah,
anyone who comes on this podcast and pretends they the answer should be hurt because no one knows, as you said.
yeah,
But I'm a tech optimist. I know people fall on the spectrum, like we are going to be killed by these robots that we're building. Like there's spectrums. I try to stay here because I think it's the healthiest place to live, by the way. But
yeah,
I do believe that there's humanity will always shine through. I see a real renaissance in the arts in regards to the humanities majors in colleges, which have been just decimated over the last 15 years. I mean, no one's going to be into history anymore. We're seeing
right.
those things come back alive, which has some beautiful implications.
Yeah, that is, and it shows you that life is, our progress is more like a pendulum. It doesn't necessarily just, it's not linear. It doesn't forcefully push in one direction always. It pushes and pulls. And you can even see how the concept of information switched from biology to technology. If you look at a computer, it's just a base 2 operating system. Biology is just a base 4 operating system. And now you're seeing this push back into biology. And it's just like, it's just back and forth.
Oh,
And
Michael, you
we
have to
constantly
read
get
my
smarter.
book because I write about this. It's called How to Raise a Cyborg, where I make that exact case. It feels like maybe
Right.
you read it
And specifically in the spectrum, well, I actually will read it, but
because
specifically, yeah, and specifically in the conversation of cyborgism, the question becomes: Do we make do we start optimizing our own biology, as in our human heart, or do we start replacing it with more fault tolerant systems like or mechanical devices that we create ourselves? And just which direction do we head in? Is it easier to repair and optimize what we have, or build something that's a lot more efficient from scratch? And
I think we're
yeah,
seeing
these
it
are
being
all
attacked from
questions.
both angles, and it'll be interesting to see who wins.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Michael, I have a debt with God, that they saved, my son was saved, who was not supposed to be here today. And in return, I will give all my education resources for free. So on my website, parents
Wow.
can find resources. One of them being How to Raise a Cyborg, that talks about just what you said, that we're living in a time where humans and technology are blending. And I would argue that Gen Alpha is the first of many cyborgs to come, and what it feels like to parent that, and
Right.
the challenge. And
Yeah.
by the way, actionable help. I also have on that website an AI video tutorial for parents to understand what it is for themselves and how to optimize their lives. And the third one is an important one, which is digital safety. While I am tech positive, we cannot ignore the harms that we are seeing in our youth with technology. And I put together a framework to help parents navigate by creating a digital fence to allow their child to integrate technology in their lives, but safely.
Absolutely beautiful, Abby. And I think you're a brilliant person, and I really would love to have you on the podcast again within a bigger time frame so we can break some of these concepts down and get a little nitty gritty, because I think it would be wonderful.
Oh, thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Okay. Thank you.